A few years ago, when I was new to making YouTube videos, I mentioned that I didn't want to talk about Disney's live-action Mulan because of how horrible it was.
And Mulan still remains as my favorite Disney princess. I'm talking about the animated version and not the live version. Let's not talk about that mess.
But seeing as terrible live-action remakes have become an unfortunate pattern for Disney, with their most recent Snow White, it's time to look back at Disney's live-action Mulan. As usual, I watched the original animated version of Mulan to reminisce about the good old days, and to compare. Also, just another reason to rewatch my favorite Disney princess. If you think Snow White's bad, Mulan was so much worse. Hi, I'm Zidney, and here's what I think of Disney's 2020 Mulan. The most recent Snow White film has received a shed load of negative reviews, mainly because of Rachel Zegler's comments about Snow White. Because fans love it when you trash the original character you're going to portray. But honestly, the story also didn't make a lot of sense. They also changed an important aspect of Snow White that made her special in the first place. Like I said, this is not Snow White. And that's also what I felt when I watched Disney's 2020 Mulan. There were so many reasons why I absolutely hated this remake. A lot of things also didn't make sense. But my biggest criticism is how they turned Mulan into a Mary Sue. In the original animated film, Mulan is your typical Chinese girl. She's clumsy, she's smart, she takes shortcuts, and people expect her to be the perfect silent wife. She cries, shouts, she fights for what she believes in. She's imperfect, but above all, she's relatable. When the emperor called for every man to fight in the army, Mulan secretly took her father's place because she wanted to protect her dad. She had to work extra hard to complete her training. Even after being dismissed, she kept training harder. Even though Mulan wasn't as physically strong as the men in the army, she had her wits to her advantage. She knew that even if they managed to defeat Shan Yu, they still had to deal with the entire Hun's army. So, she chose to target the mountain, causing an avalanche that defeated most of the enemy. However, Mulan's true identity couldn't be kept for so long. When people found out that Mulan was actually a woman, things began to change. The soldiers had to leave her behind. Shang told her to go home. Folks stopped listening to her. The advisor even called her a creature. People could not see her beyond her gender. Nevertheless, that did not stop Mulan. When people stopped listening to her, she had to take matters into her own hands. In the end, it was her ingenuity that saved China. Mulan had to constantly work harder and fight smarter, but ultimately, she became the hero of China. And then there's Mary Sue. 2020's Mulan. If you don't know what a Mary Sue is, a Mary Sue is a term used to describe a fictional character, usually female, who is seen as too perfect and almost boring for lack of flaws. And that's exactly what the new Mulan is. She's too perfect and really boring. At such a young age, the live-action Mulan has already been using a stick for a sword. She's also quite the acrobat. That's because she has a very strong chi, a concept I've heard from Kung Fu Panda. However, she had to hide her chi, her true self, because people would accuse her of being a witch. And even though she makes jokes with her sister, she still feels a little stiff. She's still smart, but it doesn't really stand out because of how she's already so good at everything. But it was pretty unwise for her to take off her armor as she heads back to battle. Like, girl, are you being for real? And you know what? I absolutely hate what they did to Mulan. Mulan has always been relatable to me. She's Chinese. I'm Filipino Chinese. She works hard. I work hard. Sometimes. She can be clumsy. I'm such a klutz. So when I watched the live-action Mulan, I was furious. What frustrates me the most is that they took a relatable, ordinary girl and turned her into this flawless chosen one. I mean, let's be real. Everyone in this movie seems to have a super-powered chi, with Bori Khan and the Emperor casually catching arrows like it's no big deal. But like, why was Mulan already so perfect at such a young age? So what happens to the development, the payoff? Why on earth did they have to ruin my favorite Disney princess? But Mulan's not the only one they butchered. Other than turning Mulan into a Mary Sue, Mulan's chaotic trio also takes a step back. Ling, Chen Po, and Yao aren't as prominent as they were in the original. They don't interact with Mulan as much as they did before. Like, even the funny bath scene was taken away from them. I noticed that most of their interactions boiled into one person, Hong Hui. I have mixed feelings about Hong Hui. On one hand, it's obvious that Disney gave Hong Hui the spotlight, disregarding the tree. But on the other hand, it made more sense that Mulan's love interest was a fellow soldier rather than her commanding officer. Don't get me wrong, I love Commander Shang, but Mulan's interactions with Hong Hui were cute. Subtle, but cute. Hong Hui telling Mulan that she stank made me chuckle, and I admit I was smiling like an idiot when they touched hands. Okay, fine, Disney, I'll give you that. However, Hong Hui and Mulan's cute interactions still couldn't compensate for the film's blandness. When I first heard that the live-action Mulan wouldn't be a musical, I was a little disappointed. Imagine removing Lea Salonga's iconic reflection. But I also understood the intention. Disney wanted a more grounded take, so of course a tiny talking dragon didn't exactly make sense. And then I watched the film. And this is making it more realistic? What?
Dishonor on you! Dishonor on your cow!
Like, I was okay with the film sacrificing the songs and Mushu, if it meant getting a deeper, more realistic portrayal of Mulan's story. But then they added a shape-shifting witch. So what was the point? At least Snow White had songs. Disney has always created amazing animated films filled with magic and heart. But when they adapt those same stories into live action, it kind of feels like they're looking down on the original animations, as if they're not good enough or not serious enough. Like, why does realistic suddenly mean better? Take the moment when Mulan sneaks off to take her father's place. In the original, the music swells with emotion. You feel the weight of her choice. But in the live action, that same scene feels flat and forgettable. Sure, the music is there, but it's barely noticeable. It just fades into the background. It only really picks up when Mulan finally puts on her father's armor, but by then, the emotional impact is already lost. And of course, who could forget the iconic reflection? In the animated film, this song dives into Mulan's internal struggle, who she's expected to be versus who she really is. It's emotional, vulnerable, and it humanizes her. But in the live action, well, there's no time for Mulan to express herself. Like, there was literally no time because the Imperial Guards show up almost immediately to announce that one man from every family must join the army. So Mulan's emotional arc gets completely skipped. Without that moment of reflection, we lose the chance to truly understand her fears and doubts. In trying so hard to make things feel more grounded, they end up removing the very magic that made the original special. Just because it's live action doesn't mean it has to lose its heart. Among all the Disney princesses who got the live action treatment, Mulan and Snow White stand out. For all the wrong reasons. They're proof that just because you can remake something doesn't mean you should, especially if you're trying to forget what made the original so beloved in the first place. Disney, just please leave our childhood alone. Okay, I take it back. Snow White is still worse than Mulan. At least Mulan's ending made more sense. But the reason I feel so strongly about the live-action Mulan is because she's my favorite Disney princess. Like, we even have the original CD copy of Mulan that my mom bought in Hong Kong. And like I said, to see a Chinese girl on TV, it's like, hey, that's me. But you don't even have to be Chinese to relate to Mulan, because you have the concept of working hard or exceeding people's expectations, and you have all of these relatable things. I mean, it's still there, but then you get to see someone so relatable turn into the chosen one, and it's really frustrating. Also, why is Disney so determined to turn their magical animated films into soulless live actions? So many people already look down on animation, thinking it's just for kids. And for the very studio that pioneered animation, it's honestly disappointing. So we'll see for Lilo and Stitch. I've heard that the ending's not that good. And again, it deviates from the main point of the original story, so we'll see. So that's one thing to look out for. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for listening to my rant. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.